What's cracking, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. New video. Before we start the video, I wanna start something new. We went live last night, and I want to make sure that I acknowledge everyone who donated through either super chats or Cash App. So Ezekiel, timepiece. Wow, timepiece did it in a major way. Patrick Hogg, Optimus Prime, Zane Cruz, Rochambeau, OG Steve on the Gunline podcast, Keith 502, Vulture, Sam Romero, Erica, Ruben, Guajardo, D, Elo, Name Game, and HP Cyclone. Thank you for the donations. Thank you for the support of the channel. I appreciate you guys very much. Now, today's video. People ask me about residents. People ask me about if they're not from a gang, what happens if they go to the California Department of Corrections. So this story is different. I don't remember ever hearing about anything like this before or after this. So this is like a unicorn, guys. So I got to New Folsom in February of 1995, right? And there was a guy there that I met. Very quiet dude, very humble, kept to himself, ran with the Southerners, but he wasn't a Southerner. So this guy's name was Gus. And I remember talking to homies, and I was like, hey, where's Gus from? They're like, oh, you don't know him? I said, nah. What's up with him? They were like, he's a really cool homie. Eh? That's a really cool dude right there. But we were in Calipatria together. Now, they had been in, so this is the very beginning in 95, right? And when Calipatria opened, and then up until like 94, 95, I mean, it was a war zone. It was complete chaos, war, bloodshed. There was a lot going on in Calipatria State Prison. And so Gus landed in Calipatria State Prison. Gus was from Northern California. Back then, it was very rare for Northerners to be sent to Calipatria. It would happen on occasion, but, you know, back in the 90s, there weren't that many yards that had Northerners on them because there was still the hostility. Now, it was never the hostility like people think all the time on site. However, efforts had been made to where Northerners were pretty much in only a couple places, right? And with their numbers, it was dangerous probably for the state to just send them anywhere. Like the state really gave a damn, though, right? So Gus gets sent down to Calipatria, and he gets jammed up. Hey, what's up, Holmes? Where you from? And he was like, I'm from, wherever county. He's like, I'm not a gang member. I never gang banged, but I fell out of this county. And they were like, okay. And so they asked him, are you a Northerner? And he said, no. And they said, well, you're going to have to prove that. So not long after that, a couple Northerners were transferred to Calipatria. And Gus was told, if you're not one of them, then you're going to have to book one of them. And Gus stabbed one of them, got away with it, and then he was okay. The Southerners didn't have a problem with him. They were like, okay, he's really not one of them. But they also told him, so from now on, you're cool with the homies and all that. But anytime they send Northerners down here from now on, you don't worry, you're not gonna have to whack them unless something comes up. But we want you to house with them, and we want to know everything they're talking about. We want to know who's their mouthpiece. You're now gonna be basically a spy. And Gus said, okay. So a while later, more Northerners were sent down to Calipatria. I believe it was a total of like 6 of them and Gus, 6 or 8 of them and Gus. I wasn't there, but a lot of homies that were there were right there in B facility in New Folsom with us. It seemed like all the dudes that had got off in the riots in Calipat, when they sent them to Corcoran Shoe, Pelican Bay Shoe, when they kicked them out, they came to New Folsom. And sure enough, Northerners landed, and Gus was in the cell with them. And when they would start making pieces, the Southerners knew, and they would remove them. And Gus was basically a double agent. And, for the Southerners, they felt like it was a great thing. Gus, on the other hand, which, during that time, nobody gives a damn what Gus is going through, what he's feeling when he's in the cell with people. He's already hit one of them. It's only a matter of time before word gets to Northerners like, hey, man, if you get to Calipat, watch out for this dude named Gus from here. And next thing you know, the yard jumps. Gus winds up catching a shoe. I believe it was for hitting another Northerner. I can't remember. But Gus goes to Ad Say, catches a shoe term, goes to Ad Say, and then poor Gus gets sent to Pelican Bay. Gus didn't go to Corcoran. Gus went to Pelican Bay Shoe. And because his housing had been that he ran with Northerners, he was placed in the cell with a Northerner. Now, prior to them letting everybody out of the shoe, shutting the shoe down, Pelican Bay Shoe was headquarters for all factions. The leadership for all factions was housed there. And everything's known there. So Gus gets there, and they had been waiting. Luckily for Gus, when he got moved on, and his Sally did move on him, his Sally only had a razor. And the cold part was Gus had a visit coming. So they waited. I think it was the day before his visit. And his Sally jumped on him and made it a point. Because with that razor, he's not going to be able to take his win. But he is able to scar him up. And he went to town all over Gus's face and was telling him, apparently, you thought you were going to get away with it, and was just hacking at his face. Gus fought for his life, but he was pretty much shredded up in his face. Went out to the hospital. They had to sew him up all over his face. And then he told me, because I asked him, I said, hey, Holmes, I heard about everything. Gus was a cool-ass dude, man. And I talked to him, and I asked him, hey, Gus, hey, what was that like? And he goes, after I came back from the hospital, my family came up again. He said they went up there to see me, and they told him that I was in the hospital. He goes, so when I got out of the hospital, they came again, man. And he goes, I look like fucking Chucky. He said, I had fucking stitches all over my damn face. And I had to see my family like that. And again, Gus, for Southerners, Gus is considered a resident. For Northerners, I don't think they have such a thing as residents. I don't know how they do it with guys that I think they force them to participate. I think that's the program with the North. Somebody could clarify that. But, for the homies, he was just looked at as a regular dude. And he was respected for his sacrifice. Before I go, I want to say that I feel like, by the way, Gus, again, like I said in the beginning, when he was in New Folsom, he sailed with Southerners. There were Northerners on that yard. I never understood why the Northerners didn't attack him. Everybody knew the Southerners were going to have his back. He had shed blood and spilled blood for the Southerners. Put himself in harm's way in a serious situation where he had whacked people from the part of California that he had been born and raised in. But he had no obligations to them. And this goes back to the question where people say, well, if I'm this or I'm that, who do I run with? You run with who you choose in California. I'm sure if Gus would have landed in a different prison, maybe had he, instead of landing in Calipatria, maybe had he landed on C facility in New Folsom, maybe his whole story would have been different. Maybe he would have landed and ran with the Northerners, because back then, C facility, up until 2000, C facility in New Folsom had been a stronghold for the North. And had he landed there, being in New, the way he landed and the fact that he was able to land where Southerners were and pick his poison, after he had, been whacked in the Bay and he got out and he was on the yard, he was just looked at as a homie. As long as he kept his nose clean, he had already put in work. And with the Southerners, it's basically like this. I've said it before, there's no such thing as dead weight with Southerners. When your number's called, if you perform, you probably aren't going to have to whack anybody, but you're going to be expected to do at least one sticking. Just to show that you're willing to help out. If you're doing your time, you're not gambling, you're not getting involved in dope, you're not politicking, you're really not on anybody's radar. There's a riot, you have to participate. So hopefully this very unique story answered the question for those that are always asking, well, I'm this and who do I run with? You run with who you choose. And you're stuck with it. Gus was a hybrid, but before I go, I wanted to say I got caught up in the weeds for a second. I think that the thing in Pelican Bay, him being attacked in his cell, I think it made him hesitant, where he knew by then, like, he was only going to do what was asked of him. And I say that for this reason, and then we'll end on this. When I caught my first shoot term, it was over a basketball game with the Bulldogs, Southerners and Bulldogs. I wasn't playing. I was off to the side. I was sitting down with, some of the fellas, and we're chopping it up. We're talking. And the Bulldogs had called out the Southerners for a basketball game. At the time, the Southerners had a squad of basketball players that even the blacks were like, man, we wish we could play against you guys. The Southerners had a squad that was, they were no joke, right? And the Bulldogs noticed it. And, the Bulldogs, they play like the professional. They know all the rules. And the Southerners don't. But this crew of Southerners did. Like, these dudes grew up, I don't know where, but they grew up balling, right? And so this Bulldog said, hey, man, I want to gamble, get your crew together and we'll go a case of sodas a game. And I'm listening and I'm thinking to myself, this dude that's making the bet, like, I don't remember this cat ever going to the store, but okay. And I guess that's how confident he was that they were going to win. And they lost 3 games in a row. He was down 3 cases of sodas. And, the Southerners were just dogging them on the court. And when they started the 4th game, there was already whispers. The dudes I was sitting with were like, this is going to go all bad, eh? That Vato can't pay. That Vato's broke. What are they doing? And so there was a little where the homies were like, what the fuck are the homies doing, eh? Why are they doing that? That Vato can't pay. So then he was OG. The dude, I told the story. You can find it when I caught my first shoot term. The dude was he reminded me of a WWE wrestler. He was tall, big ass dude, man. And he was a D number, I think, C or a D number. So he had been down since the 80s, right? And he started getting lippy. I was a youngster. I was still had the YA mentality. So when I heard this dude talking to some of the homies, reckless, I said, man, who the fuck does this dude think he is? So I'm telling the dudes with me, hey, Holmes, let's get a little closer to this basketball court. And they were like, nah, Holmes, fuck that, eh? Let them handle it. They should have never gambled that dude. Well, me being a knucklehead, I get up. I walk over to the end of the basketball court because I'm in my mind, if it goes down, I'm in, right? And there was Gus standing there, arms crossed, and he's just watching. I'm sure he wanted to play the game, but he was just looking. And I looked at Gus. Again, no disrespect to the Bulldogs, no disrespect to nobody. I'm taking you back to my mind frame and who I was back then. I looked at Gus, and I said, man, you hear these motherfuckers on who the fuck do they think they are trying to talk to homies like that? And he was like, I don't know, man. This is wild, right? Next thing you know, boom, it jumps. And I remember as soon as I saw the punch, the first punch, the Bulldog punched. Well, no, the Bulldog pushed one of the Southerners, the other Southerner next to him, punched that Bulldog, and then boom, it broke out, right? And I remember I saw the push, and I started laughing, and I started turning my head, and I told Gus, come on, Gus, let's go. And boom, I took off in there, got my money. I wound up getting shot at in the process. I was still new. I didn't know if you're stomping somebody out, that's considered like attempted murder right there. And I was literally jumping up and down on the dude. He was huge. In my mind, I was like, there's no way I'm going to let this dude back up. He's on the ground. There's no way I'm going to let him up. But I remember when everything was said and done, I looked up and Gus was standing in the same spot he was standing when I left. Gus was like, not me. He did his shoot terms. He was never going back. He did not want his face touched again. Man. So there's my video for today. It's a Saturday. It's going to be a slow day. Hopefully you guys stay safe, stay smart, and tell the ones you love that you love them, man. I'm out of here.